let's get things going. So, hello, welcome to the Driving K-12 Innovation Summit for 2025. I'm Laura Geringer. I'm your project director. I've had the joy of serving as project director since 2020, and Stephanie is here with me today. She's been on the project since 2021 and is the author for today's report. So that's very exciting. Today is all about driving innovation. So the CoSN Driving K-12 Innovation Initiative, which is why we're here today, identifies key opportunities for innovation in K-12 spaces and enables awareness and action around that. So you're going to get some resources during the summit to help you in your work. And this is all possible because of an international advisory board of educators and technologists and change makers and industry partners. Speaking of industry partners, I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors who make this initiative possible and who actually join us in thought leadership as part of the advisory board and as part of our summit here today. To set the stage, I'm going to turn things over real quick to Keith.
Thanks, Laura. Great to see so many friends from around the world. And CoSN's been around for 3 decades plus, and we've been facilitating this process on driving K-12 innovation for, I think, 16 years or so. So this is certainly an initiative that we support, but it is contributed by all kinds of partners, whether it's teacher unions, principals, superintendents, NGOs from around the world, ministries of education. So welcome wherever you come from and whatever your perspective. I like to show this slide of kind of what was innovation, what it meant when CoSN was founded in 1993. You know, you probably had if you were really a cool kid, you had a Discman for your music, you had your Palm Pilot in your pocket for your schedule. There were brick cell phones, and the point of this in showing this is not that to just laugh at the old technology, but many of these functionalities still exist today, but things keep emerging. So if you go to the next slide, we do a national survey of our core audience, which are heads of technology for our school systems, our school districts. And if you, when we started the survey 11 years ago, the red arrow ones were the top concerns: mobile learning, bring your own device, online assessment readiness, broadband access, that meant at school, and cost-effective budgeting. Look at the top 5 in the green arrow for this last year. Not a single one of those were at the top 5 back 11 years ago. Cybersecurity for our audience is number 1, data privacy number 2, network infrastructure number 3, determining AI strategy. For the first time it's there, and my guess is this next year we'll be seeing that at the top, near the top of the list. And IT crisis preparedness as we think about fires, floods, hurricanes, and what does that mean with the technology we have. The reason I show this is not that the things that are in red aren't important, but things evolve. And so when we think about innovation, we need to be thinking about what exactly today we're trying to solve. So if you go to the next slide. So what the purpose, I think, of this effort of driving K-12 innovation, having run this organization for almost all 30 years of its existence, I often get the question of, can CoSN help us predict what is the most important technology that we should be focused on? And I think that's not the way to really think about it. It's not about prediction, but rather invention. How do we invent the future we want? And even those who really did invent the future, and we have some quotes here that will amuse you, didn't really see the power of what was being created at the moment that they were created. So today what we want to do is reflect, what are the hurdles? What are the things we're trying to overcome? What are the enablers that happen, and what is the technology that will solve the big problems of today? So with that, I'll turn it back to Laura.
Thank you so much. And as Keith mentioned, this work isn't about telling you what the future holds. It's not about telling you the answer or predicting the future. And this project in today's summit is all about creating the future of learning and being in conversation and community as we do so. You're not alone in this work. And the context really matters. So what's essential in your school or district or country may not be the same as others. In the US, for example, the changing policy context may mean that your district's top hurdle right now is different from the one selected by the Global Advisory Board, which is why we've designed today's summit as a choose your own adventure theme, an innovation quest. So we're going to play with that today. You're here because you're a change maker, and we're here to share resources and space for conversation with the hope that you leave today feeling better equipped for the road ahead. So speaking of change makers, to kick things off, I would like to introduce some of your fellow change leaders. And what I'm going to do is just ask anybody who's on the advisory board in Zoom, go ahead and click the reaction and just raise your hand. So if you're looking at the gallery view, you'll be able to see some of the 130 plus advisory board members. Look at everyone. Look at all this. You want to scroll through. This global advisory board is the heart of the project. We have 13 countries represented on the board and 34 of the United States plus Washington, D.C. Ag board members, thank you so much for raising your hands. You can go ahead and put them down at your convenience, but there's no rush. The advisory board goes through a process to really dig into what's most important. So we start with a pre-survey. So we look broadly, open up what new topics should be added to the list, consider old ones, and then narrow down the discussion to 12-ish topics in each category. Over the course of a couple months, we have a discussion online synchronously through Zoom calls and then asynchronously through an online forum discussion. And then we do some converging. We have a post survey to really pinpoint what does the board believe are the most important top 3 hurdles, so barriers, accelerators, which are these catalysts, these megatrends, and tech enablers or tools for the coming year. And then what we're doing today is we're working on communicating, sharing these insights because it's really about informing action. And so with that, right off the bat, we're going to release the publication for this year. So the Driving K-12 Innovation 2025 Hurdles, Accelerators, and Tech Enablers report is live. It's public, it's free. Steph's going to drop the link in the chat. Oh, she already did. So that you can go and grab that report. By attending the summit, you're getting access to it before it's publicized elsewhere. So grab that report. We've got over 60 advisory board voices directly represented through quotes, as well as insights from many more who contributed to the report without, a direct quote ending up. We could just give you a report just straight up of direct quotes and it would be so rich, but this one is more actionable. So go ahead and grab that report. And after you do that, we're going to move right on in to the topics. So as I briefly alluded to, we use a 3-part framework. So these are 3 lenses that we consider what's impacting innovation in K-12 and what we should be doing or could be doing to drive innovation. So we break it into hurdles, accelerators, and tech enablers. Just as a useful framework to think about, okay, what's getting in the way? What are these barriers we need to overcome? What's catalyzing, or what are these mega trends around innovation? And then what are the tools that we're using? For 2025, these are the top 9 topics, so 3 in each category. We've got attracting and retaining educators and IT professionals, evolution of teaching and learning, and digital equity for our hurdles or our barriers, learner agency, building the human capacity of leaders, and changing attitudes towards demonstrating learning as the three accelerators, these catalyzing megatrends. And then for tech enablers, you probably won't be surprised that Gen AI, generative artificial intelligence, is our top tech enabler. We've got analytics and adaptive technology and untethered broadband and connectivity. And so those are the topics we're going to dig into. And along with them, we just through conversation, keep an eye out for themes, things that bridge topics, things that are woven throughout the conversation, things that aren't so much a hurdle to be overcome or a tool to be used necessarily, but these considerations that weave throughout our work. And this year, so much of our conversation was intersectional, and these four themes really stood out: ethical innovation, personalization, the future of work, and critical media literacy. So it's this idea that we use the hurdles, accelerators, and tech enablers framework to help us make sense of the highly complex landscape in which we work, but we don't look at topics in silos. We don't say digital equity has nothing to do with any other topic. You know, it's not in its own little box, because everything is so intersectional, and that's what these bridges are about. Okay, let's do a quick activity. We are going to, throughout today, play with this choose your own adventure idea. And as we're doing that, we're going to be asking you for your opinions, your experiences, your insights. So first of all, we want to ask about your why. Why do you undertake the quest to innovate? And if you want to scan that QR code, or Steph's putting a link in the chat, go ahead and type in your answer there. And I'm going to switch screens so we can see what you have to say. There we go. A mini story while you're doing this, while you're thinking about it. This work is hard. It takes effort and consistent effort and perseverance. And so knowing what's motivating you can be a great touch point as you're going through this. I play Dungeons and Dragons, and there's often a point where you have to decide why your character is bothering to do the hard thing. So in this instance, why you as innovators are bothering to do the hard thing, why you are bothering to drive change, to stand up for what students need, to create excellent environments for your staff and your team to work in. So in the Dungeons and Dragons world, why is my character tracking down the bad guy, saving the village, returning the artifact, whatever? Why do this instead of retiring and opening a fantasy tavern? And so that's the question for you. Why do you undertake this quest? And I see a lot of really awesome answers coming through. I'm just going to scroll so you can see a bit more of them. For our kids, our future students, seeing a lot of themes about it being about the students. Providing opportunity, continuous improvement, building a better tomorrow, student voice and educator support, growth, nothing standing still. Fantastic. So as we move along through our summit today, keep this why in mind. Keep in mind why you are embarking along this journey, why this journey is worthwhile to you. And you can come back to that touch point when things get hard. So with that, with these quests in mind, let's start with the mountains to be overcome. Let's start with our hurdles. So we're going to invite our speakers for the hurdle section to come to the virtual stage. Jill's got that covered. And I'm going to hand things over to Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I am so lucky because in this work, I get to highlight and lift up the voices of so many of our of all of our advisory board members. And so I would like to welcome Ed McCavney and Zainab Adil, who are going to join us today to talk about our hurdles. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm just setting my timer here real quick. Good. Well, welcome everybody. So thinking of hurdles. So you can see here on the screen the top 3 hurdles. The number 1 out of percentages. If you look at the report, the attracting and retaining educators and IT professionals seem to stand out on top. But then evolution of teaching and learning and digital equity kind of at an on par kind of almost equal weighting, I guess, within the category of hurdles. But to each of us, that means something different. So there's a lot of this, like what goes into these educators and IT professionals in each of our organizations, the evolution. So thinking of these things, what do these topics mean to the schools right now, like our individual schools? So I can't speak for everybody, but Zainab, if you wanted to chime in maybe with your perspective on your end of things with your school.
Right. Yeah. So I'll start. So basically, if you look at our position, we are 100% virtual private school. So we are, you could say, not a very huge, a very common district that you have, but still we have almost these hurdles that we are facing, and it's very relevant. And if you talk about the first one, like attracting and retaining educators and IT professionals. So I'm working in the IT department, and I feel it all the time. And post-COVID, this has gone to next level, I would say, because a lot of this whole like after COVID, everyone had a chance to go online, and then they were introduced to a lot of different tools, and there was so much rapid EdTech revolution at that time. Now we have to take a look and see how much the world changed. Now going back to in person. A lot of schools are still using a lot of these, tech tools. And you don't find like, the EdTech world, or if you talk about the IT professionals in education, they have a very different perspective. You don't find that common. Like if you bring an IT person from the corporate world and introduce them to our educational technology or EdTech, you will see they would also have, they have to take some time to get used to our educational technology, and being in a district or in a K-12 position, it's very different. That is why it's hard, and it's challenging for anyone. So I think one thing is our like the IT in EdTech and in education and K-12 schools is very different. Often times one person had to have like different hats, right? And there are other implications like cybersecurity, their privacy, all that are much more, I would say they're important and very, very sensitive matters, right? So I think that is one thing. You don't find that many, IT professionals, and they have like their challenges, their own thing when they are working in education.
Thanks. And as I think about my district, so I'm a suburban school district in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then I've been part of this advisory board for a good number of years, and seeing that evolution over time and the way these hurdles come up each year and the way they evolve. And I know for me personally, like in my district, the attracting educators and IT professionals, I see certain subject area classes where somebody will go on leave for some reason or something like that, and to try and get a sub or a replacement for that person in that specialized class is very difficult on the educational side, let alone at the same time on our IT staffing. Thinking of within the teacher space, there's a lot of professional certifications, but on the technology, and the same thing on the IT side, but typically with professional certifications on the IT side, you see those career pathways, but in a smaller school district or versus large, there's not always a ton of lateral movement or job, evolution for somebody to move into a new position as they acquire certifications but there's that continuous need for professional learning, so that because technology change, new technologies keep coming. So what kind of pathways can we put in place in skills and certifications? But thinking of the themes too that was mentioned, that Laura mentioned at the beginning, in the with those themes like future of work and critical media literacy, like our own technology people, we're trying to train students and help that in IT careers. We're helping the educators with those aspects of things, but at the same time, trying to lead that and do that within our own departments. So what are those benefits? What certifications do what people want to follow and learn about? Because it's going to change what we need to support in the school district. But then that also ties into that evolution of teaching and learning. So where on the teaching side, where you would teach the curriculum now, I see our teachers and buildings having challenges around managing or tracking or even obtaining career placements for kids, where there's a lot of vendor companies and stuff, whether it's robotics or art or business, these mentorships and fellowship programs where you would follow an educator or go there. They're set up for university interns, not necessarily high school interns, where we can't easily transport people to those places unless they drive themselves or depending upon the age and things. And just there's a lot of challenges there. And the digital equity side, like my district, we have a lot of access to tools, but at the same time, it's not just access, from broadband and computer access, but it's how do you actually access the tools that are used by those. So like these newer AI or some of these other types of advanced tools that sometimes cost money. Like how do kids and people learn about those things when there's the barriers to that access, where from a financial or cost standpoint, or just that it's not part of the teaching and learning environment, because you still have to develop your educators' knowledge of things to really teach students about those. So I'm seeing those challenges really, and that's how I'm struggling with those hurdles a little bit in our district across the board. But we have our whole team, doing different pieces of that together.
Yeah.
What do you think? Also, thinking ahead as well. So thinking about what can we do about these types of things today? What do you think about some of that to try and help people overcome?
Right. One thing I'd like to add here is, digital equity also plays out when we have, look at our current tools, and, every school at least, would have tons of tools that educators and students and everyone has to use. Right. And then if there's we have seen the interoperability challenges that come in when you bring in these tools, and each educator, each learner has to learn and, then use that. And you would see in the IT side of things, these support questions being created. This is not working, that is not working. So I think the design aspect of these are if you look at how these could be connected more, and we can give a seamless experience to all the educators and the students when they are using. For example, you would have an LMS, and within LMS you would have multiple tools, and if you talk with educators, think about a life of educator now, how much they have to learn. Like they have to relearn a lot of different things that they used to do. Things are changing. We are living in a very interesting time now. And with AI, AI could help, they can assist you, but still educators have to know how to prompt the AI. They have to know, okay, this tool works best for, let's say, formatted, but it won't be a good tool if I use it for, let's say, a discussion. So there are so many different things out there, and they're, they have like these fancy feature lists that you can, just look at it. Okay, wow, it works this and this. But in reality, when you put it in a classroom, you see the challenges start coming up. Sometimes it won't work well with, you could say, elementary students, and then when you reach out to that vendor, they will say, no, we designed it that way, that is why you're experiencing this. So I think digital equity also has to play where we look at when we select our tools, or when we are trying to get or vet some softwares, we have to be very careful that how would be the implications and how it would play for each and every person in our district, our students, our educators.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I'm thinking of that in terms of our the digital ecosystem that we're and the tech ecosystem, but how it plays into our human ecosystem, and the broader the schools partnerships, alumni, tracking, things like that, careers, how well did they do beyond our school district? And looking at the report, it actually, I'm reminded of something as well in terms of digital equity, but it highlights digital literacy for all, as part of that. So I think I like the way it says that in terms of that digital literacy role. How do you become literate about things without being able to try that or explore that tool, or just awareness of tools? Our framework for teaching that we evaluate teaching on, one of those components is awareness of resources. So if you don't know that something exists, you're not going to try to learn about it or how to use that tool in your own work. But that also ties to the theme again, back to that future of work theme, where as these are going to greatly impact themes, and we'll see that definitely in the towards the end there in and the tech enablers. So there's the enablement piece, but then also the hurdle piece of these tools, I think, and how they tie together. So in terms of, I think we touched upon this some a little bit, but maybe we could reflect on it a little bit more in terms of how these specifically matter to us, within your job. And I think you mentioned that some, but like your job, thinking of how it matters to you, not just your district, I think. Do you have some thoughts on that?
So yeah, I think that also put additional burden on the IT side or tech side of things, because with a lot of these tools, you have to deal with all those issues that come up, right? So I know a lot of work is being done, where we use these different standards to make sure the data passback, everything is good, but still we'll always see these issues coming up, and it put additional burden not only on IT side but also on teachers and educators who are teaching. And if they come across these issues, the whole learning is disturbed. Like you're in a classroom, you assign a homework, and if half of your time, maybe 20%, 30% of your class time goes into just troubleshooting things, so it again goes back to our evolution of teaching and learning and educating. And you mentioned a very good point, like the digital literacy. So it all has to tie together, and the ecosystem should be so seamless. So I always I heard read somewhere about the design aspect of our social media apps, right? They're so seamless, so easy to use. You can put anyone there and they would just go like it would be up and running for them. They would be using it in 15-20 minutes. But when you come on the educational side of things and the technology we have here, to be frank, it's hard, right? If you put a non-tech person or educator and you told them, okay, this is what you have to teach, this is where you'll find your curriculum, you have to do this is how you assign the work, and then no, this is another tool and this works this way. So there's so much to learn here. And if we can make this experience seamless, maybe our tool is so interconnected, and it's like you just have to click and what would be the next thing. You don't have to struggle to find what you're looking for. So I think that would really, help us with this teaching and learning evolution, as well as the experience that you have with all these tools that you use day to day.
Yeah, I'm seeing some very similar things, I would say, in my district, because the trying to a lot of these tools, they have free logons or things like that. But in terms of trying to truly review and vet the data sharing relationships they have with third parties, or the privacy aspects of that tool, and what it means if you copy and paste some resources into there, if you're generating questions, but if you have it, scoring something or working with students, and there's any part of that is included by name, then what agreement did you have to filter that out or anonymize that some way, or where did that then get told? Or if somebody copies and pastes a paper in there but forgets to copy out one header, or they have a copyright related thing, because you want to have a tool that will then convert that for somebody that has a different reading level. It'll take that paid resource and convert it, but then you see in the news, if you follow that, there's lawsuits around an AI tool that went behind somebody's paid resource wall and harvested their stuff to train their model. So we don't want to be the people that's stuck in the middle of that as well. But the sheer volume of things that we have to try to vet and navigate between privacy, interoperability, how things get rostered or don't get rostered, and what names students appear as, and all those types of things. It's just without growing our tech teams, or without putting tools that automate those things into place, it's very challenging. So as part of that ecosystem we're building. One of the other things I thought about is that when you mentioned design, is because when I worked in higher ed years ago, I did a lot of design work, and that's actually what my master's and background is in design. And one of the things that I've done and looked a lot with is the thought of universal design for learning, or UDL. And when I work in my district, my current role, I do a lot with special education students, from blind students or hearing impaired there's all kinds of different things, and we work with partner agencies. But thinking of how these tools are accessed, and whether it runs on an iPad or a Windows laptop or a Chromebook or some other type of thing, and how it can, the tools that we pick and how they apply to students for all, and how the design elements of our ecosystems work for all students. There's a lot of challenges there in terms of vetting things and making sure that it works correctly. But I think that the concept of, in the framework, there's a whole framework for universal design for learning out there. Looking at that can probably help. That's one of the tools that could potentially help people overcome some of these hurdles as they thoughtfully approach some of these things.
I 100% agree with that. Also, the accessibility part, often these two, you would find that these two would miss that part. You would get these flashing images coming from here and there. but some of the students would struggle figuring out where the actual thing is, right? I think this is a very amazing idea, and I loved it, like universal design for everyone and each learner, right? So I think these things are where, if we start working on putting our focus, it would really help everyone and, overcome these hurdles. Again, I'll just go back to one of the points that we were discussing, like attracting educators and retaining it. So I'm not sure if it's for everyone, but we have seen this this year that a lot of educators are, generally considering to leave the teaching and go to any other role, right? And that could be, work stress, that could be other, things like how AI is evolving everything, right? So we actually are struggling to retain our educators in our school. We have been through professional developments and a lot of other things, but still, I think we have to redefine the entire way how we are, and as AI is, there for everyone, we have to, maybe come together and see what is actually causing, like we all know what would be, but again, we have to redefine how our teaching, like how this whole teaching life cycle looks like, right? Year to year, in summers, when you go back and start, what should be, what should teachers expect, right? How they should, plan the year so they are less stressed and they always have the opportunity to reach out to the person that could, mentor them. So one of the things I feel like, we don't have that many mentors that could help our teachers, uh, tackle all the stress and all these, you know, issues, that they face day to day, right? They have other teachers to support, but sometimes, often you would see, they're isolated and they struggle and they're, very close to burnout, and sometimes they are burnt out, right? By the end of the year, you'll find teachers, really struggling to keep up. So maybe we have to, look at our environment, our school, the way it supports the staff and everything.
Yeah, definitely. And I see that my wife is a mathematics teacher, and I see her, at the high school level, like the number of classes that she had and the things she has to prepare for, but grading, it's not and the same thing for our tech team. There's constant needs for overtime for different projects and other types of things. And the same thing with grading at night, or and there's just so many challenges around that. So as we think of as we wrap up this section, this evolution of teaching and learning and retraining, things that the world is around us, it's constantly the speed at which these things, and that we have to approach these things and try to overcome them, is accelerating. So I thought of that actually seems to be, to me, a good segue into accelerators, which is coming up next. Not to step on anything, but that's one of the things I was thinking about, is how do we speed up enough to we hit these hurdles and overcome them before they're just everything passes us by, is one of my kind of closing thoughts, I guess. And I think that wraps up our session at the moment in terms of our time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Zainab. I appreciate this rich discussion that you've allowed us to have this morning, or allowed us to witness your discussion, because sometimes these hurdles can feel really insurmountable, but together and with tools, we can make it work. So now my timer's going off. Thank you again so much. And we're going to go back to Mentimeter for a second, and we're going to think about these hurdles, and think specifically about your hurdle and which of the hurdles that we've highlighted is the most important for you to address in order to further your quest, as we're on this journey together. So hopefully you grabbed the QR code, or you've got the link from the chat, and just go ahead and vote for which you think is most important for you. We'll give you a few minutes, not a few minutes, but a little bit of time to think through that.
So learner mode is pretty easy. So you said that we can access that through your
Looks like
system
evolution of
directly
teaching and
or through
learning
our school.
is
So
leading the way,
here, I prefer the
followed by attracting and retaining educators and IT professionals. Digital equity, still a very, very important hurdle. Yes, Katie, it does make you feel a little less alone when others are choosing the same thing. And I did see comments about having a community, and we hope that's what the Driving K-12 Innovation Advisory Board can offer for people, a place for discussion and to talk through some of these things, these hurdles, these accelerators, and these tech enablers. So Laura, should we take a look at the map and where we're at? We'll close the poll.
Okay, so as today we're charting what this group, this community who's here today, what your journey looks like. We're looking at going from our why, evolution of teaching and learning, and then on to accelerators. So we're just going to do a little travel by map. And having now done a check-in about your top hurdle, what are we up to next, Steph?
Well, we're going to cruise on over now that we've gone through those mountains. We're going to head over to accelerators and talk about some of the catalysts that can really drive this innovation forward. And to join us for that discussion, we have Sarah Radcliffe, Ryan Cox, and Chris Smith, who are going to talk to us a little bit about this year's accelerators, which are, again, learner agency, building the human capacity of leaders, and changing attitudes towards demonstrating learning. And thank you all so much for being part of our panel today.
All right, thank you very much. And Ed, that was a great segue into accelerators. Some of the things that you talked about as hurdles, some of our accelerators can actually help you overcome some of the hurdles. So hopefully in our discussion today, you'll see some ways to help leverage the staff that you have and navigate some of those big changes in teaching and learning. I'm Sarah Radcliffe. I'm the Director of Future Ready Learning for the School District of Altoona in West Central Wisconsin. And I oversee CTE, virtual learning, college and career readiness, and libraries in my district. So the things that I oversee touch a lot of these different areas, both in operation and instruction. I'm also the CoSN board secretary and a board member on my state chapter of CoSN called Weedle, and a member of the K-12 Innovation Committee. So it's been fun doing this work, exciting to put that report out today for all of you, and thank you for being here. I'm really excited to talk about accelerators. I like to think about what the future of classrooms will look like and how we'll ensure that all students have the skills and knowledge they need to thrive in their world with whatever they choose to do. And we all know that the world is changing rapidly at this point. So these are questions that can keep educators and dreamers up at night. One thing that that's helpful that we can pull from the report is using these accelerators to leverage the strategies that we have to continue to build programs and ways for students to achieve. So as defined by the report, these are the key trends that aren't just influencing, but accelerating innovation in K-12 education. They represent forces that are shaping learning and shaping the ways that things will look like in the future. We have two panelists today that are leveraging accelerators in their districts. From my neighbor in Minnesota, Ryan Cox, and from the East Coast, Chris Smith from North Carolina. Chris, we're going to start with you. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you leverage capacity building with leaders to accelerate your work in North Carolina?
Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Chris Smith. I'm an instructional designer with North Carolina Virtual Public Schools. So to talk about a little bit, I've got to give a little bit of background on NCVPS for short. So we're one of the largest virtual state-led school systems in the country. And with that, we do everything internally. We write our own curriculum. We don't use textbooks. So we pay teams of teachers. We hire teachers to come in and write the curriculum, review it. It's based off standards. It follows the backwards design. Kind of like was already said with the hurdles, UDL was mentioned. We follow revised Bloom's, universal design for learning principles, all that type stuff. With that process comes training that goes along with it. So when we're hiring teachers to do this work, they're teachers coming out of the district from across the state. They get detailed training on how to write curriculum aligned to standards on the accessibility and digital equity pieces. And so they get that part where they learn to write the curriculum, but also we serve over 62,000 students across the state. And with that, all of our teachers are part-time supplementary. So most of them teach in the building. And so, along with that, we have developed a program where to teach with us, regardless of whether you're in your infancy of becoming a teacher or you've taught for 30 years, you're an administrator, whatever, you have to go through our internally developed teacher and training program, which is a 15-week, almost like going back to college. The first half of it is in the classroom work. The second half is where you are mentoring and following along with an online teacher before you're allowed to ever be assigned a section. And during that process, one whole module of that is dedicated to digital equity, accessibility, ADA and 508 compliance. I actually do a live module with that. So each spring, summer, and fall, we have 3 cohorts a year that do that program. There's a live session for one night where I go in and do the training with that group. So anyone coming into our organization, our full-time staff has all been trained in accessibility and all of that type stuff. All of our incoming teachers, anyone that writes with us. We also are the most recognized K-12 organization for the number of Quality Matters certified courses. So all of our courses that we write then do go through the Quality Matters process and get certified. And so we actually put several of our teachers through that Quality Matters training. And what we found, basically the reason why I'm talking about all this, as I mentioned a minute ago, that our teachers are also full-time teachers in the building at different levels. They're going back into their buildings and talking about just how much all of this information and professional development and the experiences they've gotten have transformed and changed their entire classroom setting, from the instruction they provide, the curriculum that they use, different things like that. And so, of course, we also have an internal program where they can go on to become an instructional leader and a curriculum leader. And so from there, we do an internal process where we evaluate all of our teachers, and accessibility and supporting diverse learners is part of that as well. And part of the reason why all that's integrated so much, of course, is not because the legal aspect, but out of our 62,000 enrollments, 25% of those are what are called occupational course of study students. They're not on a diploma track like everyone else. They are severe impairment needs in terms of mental capacity and different things like that. And so we serve them in a blended program where there's an in-building EC teacher working with one of our online teachers. So we have all these things going on where we're really working to evolve teaching and learning and digital equity. Those are 2 of the main things that we focus on. And as a result of those, we're retaining high quality educators as well.
So you touched on, Chris, how this accelerator of using building the human capacity of leaders in your district helps you attract and retain teachers. So helps with that hurdle of keeping teachers and keeping high quality teachers in your system. I also really liked about how you talked about all of your teachers go through this program, and then there's ways that they can continue to grow from new teachers all the way to veteran teachers. That helps to build your high quality workforce, but also to re-engage teachers. I think, teachers experience burnout, and re-engaging them in the things that they're passionate about building learning opportunities for students can help re-engage them and help prevent some of that burnout. Chris, what is a barrier that you've maybe had to overcome in working with teachers and working in your district on building leader capacity?
So the biggest barrier that we face is being a supplemental program within the state, coming out of the pandemic and everything. A lot of a lot of different districts across the state have started their own virtual academies, have started their own trying to do this basically in-house, and so we're competing against different places across the state as it is. Um, and that's one thing, but in terms, so our enrollments have dropped a little bit because of that. But in terms of like the whole attracting and retaining teachers, we pay our teachers really well. So we have a model where we pay per student. So each of our teachers gets paid $306 per each student they teach. And so it's one of those where even though that 15 weeks is not that 15 weeks is part of a hurdle because it's unpaid training that they have to go through, and they have to complete that before they're ever able to be assigned a section. And so that is a hurdle in itself because sometimes the attrition rates on that drop pretty low because of the amount of work that's involved with it and time it takes. But once they get in, it's okay. But again, like the amount of time it takes and effort involved in that, those are probably two of the biggest hurdles that we face.
Sure. And supporting teachers and understanding the why behind that kind of training and capacity building. I think that when you have all of your teachers engaging in this capacity building with leadership, you're also having more staff members invested in the why behind your organization and understanding sort of what's behind the curtain and how everything is happening. So thank you, Chris, for sharing that. Ryan, I know that you have in your work, you've leveraged building capacity with leaders as well, but you found some success in utilizing learner agency to prepare students for their futures. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes that accelerator stand out to ensure progress for the students in your district?
Sure. So real quick, just background, Ryan Cox, Director of Technology here in Osseo, recently joined Osseo, fifth largest district in the state, about 6, 7 months ago. Have had a few opportunities, both classroom and tech leadership. So Sarah, as we're talking about this, I'll kind of reflect on kind of the few of the stops I've had in my career. The big thing about learner agency in my experience is it allows students to hit the ground and hit the learning in a way and at the place that best meets their needs. That ability for students to take that ownership, the interest. It isn't a set schedule where students are brought through the curriculum, brought through the learning at the same time, knowing that students differ so greatly in what they're bringing to the table and also their understanding throughout this whole process. I'm always reflect on the 1950s, the study that the Air Force took a look at when they were looking at their planes, for example. So they used to design airplanes with the cockpit that was based on the average, right? They built the cockpit by the average pilot, and they assumed that pilots would be able to adjust. And what they found out was that when they did this study in the 50s, that no pilot actually met that average criteria. And so they realized in order to create a more safe environment for their pilots, they had to create a flexible environment.
Yeah, and they essentially then designed a cockpit for nobody.
For nobody.
Right.
Right. Because it was average and there's no average, they designed it for no one that exists. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Which in some ways, some parallels, and it's not to say that education isn't designed for anyone, because I still believe in the human capacity and the potential education, obviously. But it's this idea that if we can create a flexible environment where students are able to move at their own pace, to create that mastery, to use technology and the resources available, we can see that evolution of teaching and learning change. You take a look at that hurdle directly, evolution of teaching and learning, by encouraging and by supporting learner agency, we will naturally see that change from a teacher-led classroom to more of a student-guided, student-led educational environment. Again, if we can create a cockpit that is flexible, we can look at the same parallels with our classrooms. Yeah.
Awesome. And I love that you said that creating this environment for students to find their own way and use their own strategies in learning. Do you have any successes that you can share that are examples or lessons that you've learned in learner agency that kind of demonstrates its power as an accelerator in your schools?
My previous district, and I'll shout out Katie Herbolt's on the call today too. She's the new director of tech for St. Cloud. Some of the work that her and I were able to partner with over the last few years was looking at this model of self-paced, the self-paced idea, the idea of creating mastery and those kind of pieces. What we saw with kids and with teachers too. I don't want to lose that, Sarah, but with kids, with our students, we saw that ability to be more engaged and move at that pace that met their needs. If a student needs to take longer at something, the technology can support that, and the teacher isn't the only person that can provide that understanding. For our teachers, in my previous role, we also saw teachers that began to, I'm just going to call it be able to breathe, right? Be able to take that step back and let the students create the kind of the force and create the pathways, and they're able to coach, they're able to guide, but they're not the ones that are responsible. What's the phrase, Sarah? The person doing the work is doing the learning. And if the teacher is the only one doing the work or the majority of the work, then who's doing the learning? So put the kids in the driver's seat, put the students in a way that can guide things for themselves, and let the teacher be there to coach. I mean, I don't know too many football coaches that run in the field and run a play on Friday night. Let's be honest. You got to coach them up, and then you got to hope that they're going to do well and help them along the way. And if we can do that, we can let our teachers breathe a bit and find that planning time and find that ability to connect with their kids differently.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes what we see is teachers working harder for the learning than students working.
Right,
So
right.
learner agency definitely helps that. Chris, do you have anything to add about learner agency? Being that your program is virtual, students have to be kind of self-motivated with some of their learning. What do you see in terms of learner agency with the students that you serve?
Yeah, so I'll actually build off of what Ryan was just finished up and saying. Because we write our own curriculum and we build our courses, we have the flexibility to transform them into whatever we need. And so we've had several different natural disasters here in North Carolina across the last few years, whether it be hurricanes or flooding or anything else like that. So we have different things like 10 and 20-day plans where we can shave off certain amounts of the semester. But what's really powerful is, and one of the things that we don't see as often is we see a lot, we've talked a lot about digital equity, we've talked a lot about the middle ground, but accelerators in terms of like academically gifted or high flying students. And so one of the things that we've been able to do over the past couple years is we've taken like our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade like core middle school courses, especially in math, and we've created what we call math 6 plus, math 7 plus, to where this spring, we're actually doing something even more innovative as we have a group of 5th graders in Wake County Schools, which is where Raleigh, North Carolina is, who are enrolled in an advanced math 6 course. So basically they're taking 6th and 7th grade math as 5th graders, so that then they're ready to they'll have math 1 before they ever get to 8th grade, and they'll be on track to have some of the highest level math before they ever graduate high school. And so with this learner agency, we have so much of that flexibility where all we've got to do, we've built the curriculum, we just pull back and forth, we work with some teachers and figure out what that acceleration is going to be. And so we're able to create that. And then in terms of, we have, our teachers have high expectations that they have to follow in terms of working with students. Of course, we still have some of the same issues that you have in the building where you have students that are, not present. They disappear for long periods of time and different things like that. But they find that like one of the things I do a lot of work in higher ed too. And so some of the individuals I've worked with in higher ed see our courses and see just how rigorous they are. And so students are often like, they get excited because it's not stagnant. There's constantly, when we do look at universal design for learning, we're building different pieces in there, but there's an opportunity for students to grow everywhere. And then internally, we created an internal tutoring program where the students serve as the tutors. They can apply. So we have like a virtual buddy system. We have a tutoring program. We have all these things internal where we actually build student leaders on top of the leadership stuff we do with our teachers.
Absolutely. And when we give kids time and space to learn and show what they can do, there's really just no limit to what kids can do, which makes what makes education so fascinating. I want to thank you both for sharing information from your district about learner agency and building the human capacity of leaders. I think that what's neat about this report also is that we can see how some of these accelerators can assist with hurdles, but some of these accelerators can also assist with tech enablers, because really in this accelerator portion, it's about change management, and we're using student voice and we're using building the capacity of leaders to manage change in our districts.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Chris. I was furiously writing notes on the side. Just such a wonderful, it's so good to hear about people who are, this is part of their everyday life. They are learning, they are sharing what they've learned, so that we as a community can be more enlightened, more engaged, and hopefully inspired to make change in our districts as well, in our organizations. So now that we've heard the accelerators, panelists, thank you again. We're going to move back to Mentimeter, and we're going to think about your individual accelerators. So which of the three, which again, oh, thank you, Laura. She's added what these three are. Which of these is most important for you as you to leverage on your quest and your personal journey? So as Sarah was kind of saying, how do we overcome hurdles with these accelerators, and also leverage our tech enablers to help you fulfill your why? I'll give you a few minutes to think about that. I was going to say, is Laura going to hide the results from us now?
Keeping secrets over here.
Yeah. Things are moving, they're shifting. Make sure to get your votes in. It's so wonderful to be able to hear from you all in different ways, whether it's through our panel discussions, through these polls, and just more ways for you to hear from others as well. Okay, Laura, shall we close the poll and check out our map
Absolutely.
once again?
Okay, so it looks like changing attitudes towards demonstrating learning is where our journey is taking us next. So let's just get this penciled in. Go. Okay, and from accelerators, we're then moving on to tech enablers.
Yes, and these are our tools. And Laura, if it's okay, I would love to introduce everyone to our panelists today. We have Tom Ryan joining us from not New Mexico, from a conference, but he works out of New Mexico. Lisa Gustinelli from Florida, and Lauren Rodriguez from Illinois with me. So I am very excited to have you all to talk about our tech enablers, which this year are, as Laura has said before, generative artificial intelligence, analytics and adaptive technologies, as well as untethered broadband and connectivity. And take it away.
Well, I have a great group of folks here. In fact, that it's going to be hard to harness them or pull them back from much longer conversation. Lisa and Lauren are two experts in the area, so I appreciate them. And I also appreciate CoSN not only providing the resources that they do, but the documentation, the reports, so that we have an area around where we can center our conversations and just grow as leaders and stop being so isolated in our own individual districts. So thank you for that. We have the three enablers, and I think that you didn't have how we were getting there. I think you said you were flying over the mountains. We want to be a boat that's flying, and we're trying to make it into a plane as we go, because that's our challenge in front of us. We have generative AI as a #1 thing, probably not a surprise to anybody. We're not going to start there only because generative AI is driving the other two. So we're going to finish with generative AI. We're going to start with the untethered broadband and analytics and adaptive technologies first. I was fortunate enough to be on the CoSN board, and we had some of these data-driven tools, one of which, the most recent one, was the equity dashboard, which we took a bunch of data around the country and then applied it towards school districts. And we're moving from the static dashboard of information to a much more real time. It was such a pain to have to be taking data from disparate systems and then writing some API that eventually led to some report on a dashboard or website. Now we're moving towards, because of AI, real-time assessment of data that can give teachers the information they need to make instructional decisions, but I think it'll also really help the administrators on the operational side to make better decisions more efficiently, thereby giving more resources, especially tying systems like your filtering data and internet with student information, and being able to look at how these sets of data that we've never combined before really make a difference in our future with kids. So starting with adaptive analytics technologies, et cetera, we're looking for data-driven decisions. So there's evidence that we're really making progress, not feel like technologies make a difference. We want to have it more personalized and adaptive so that it can make 30 students in a classroom feel like they're getting an individual lesson plan or instruction. It's also providing some opportunities for us, if we can harness the data, to have some interventions into the challenges that kids are facing, and have some predictions about what we can do and how we're going to do it to move forward. And again, I think there's a whole bunch on the operational side where we can start looking at how do we make the efficiencies and effectiveness that's necessary to make the business run better. I do want to point out on the CoSN website, they have 10 tips for using analytics and adaptive technology in schools. I hope you check out that site, because I think it gives some really pertinent data. So enough of me talking. I want to hear from Lauren from Chicago Public Schools. What does analytics and adaptive technologies mean to you and Chicago?
Thanks, Tom. So yeah, I'm Lauren Rodriguez. I'm the manager of enterprise generative AI for Chicago Public Schools. And for us, it means a lot, right? So with being such a large district with over 20,000 teachers, 320,000 students, we have mountains of data. And for as long as we've been around, many years of data as well. And that data spans in the classroom, so grades, test scores, attendance records, behavioral information, but also operationally, as you mentioned, Tom. So like finance, facilities, transportation, talent, all of this data, and it actually, where does it all live is an important question to ask as well. So for us, we actually just got a project approved by our board, which is the Master Data Management Refresh Project. It's called Project Stream. Store, transform, refresh, enhance, analyze, and manage data. So it's we recognized that we are on legacy systems with over 15-year-old systems that can no longer be upgraded to support our needs at this point. And so that project is intended to do modernization of our entire technological stack, improve data governance. So also consolidating all of the data that I mentioned, so the academic data, the administrative data, operational, so that we can have advanced insights. We can look at all of the supports that are being pushed out to schools, everything academically, from the teachers and the students interacting with the curriculum. We also have a digital curriculum, so it is not mandatory. It is completely optional for our teachers to adopt, but it is digitally delivered. And so when students interact with that curriculum, There is a learning objects repository that they interact with. So they'll be clicking on digital assets with metadata associated with those digital assets. We have an assessment platform where the students will be taking their assessments, and the teachers can go in and look at the data there. We have Google Classroom as a component of it as well. And so we have all of this data living in these digital platforms, and that's just from our digital curriculum. But if we can combine all of that data, the in-classroom data with all of the operational data as well, we can really get some data-driven decisions and insights and actionable outcomes from all of that review. So also empowering our end users with dynamic dashboards and longitudinal analytics.
So Lauren, you report under IT, right? And what?
Correct. As of September, so I was actually in teaching and learning for about 3.5 years, and then I moved into ITS in September in my new role.
And your job now is to do what?
To oversee the implementation of generative AI across the district. So that includes both inside the classroom and outside the classroom.
I think it's amazing that the district and your leadership in IT was advanced enough to be able to push through this new position that really helps to focus on how do we coordinate the activities so that AI is implemented with intention, and some of the good things can happen and not just all the bad. When you talk about interoperability, you said you have all these systems that obviously don't all talk together. What are they? How are you using interoperability or connecting these systems so that there is a little bit better flow? Or is there some ideas with AI that's going to help you to do that?
Absolutely, yeah. So Skyline was built with the One EdTech at the time, One IMS Global interoperability standards at its core. So
Skyline is your SIS?
I'm sorry?
What is Skyline?
So the Skyline's the digital curriculum, and so we have it's basically split into two components. There's the digital learning environment, which is the ecosystem of platforms that work together that are interoperable with each other, and then there's the digital curriculum itself, which is the curricular content. So all of the materials that the teachers and students would interact with. So the digital learning environment, which allows for the digital curriculum to actually be accessible by our teachers and students, was built around One EdTech interoperability standards. And so One Roster, LTI, we've tried to get into Caliper, but we haven't really gotten there yet. But really at the core of Skyline was interoperability. And the idea was like for us to have that plug and play system so that we can have, if we need to go to a public bid for a new assessment platform, we need to be able to swap that assessment platform out. Same thing for our learning objects repository. And thinking into the future of what Skyline could do, those interoperability standards would allow us to then capture all of that data from all of those disparate systems and combine them in the back end so that we can see a holistic journey of a student throughout Skyline and the different platforms contained therein.
Perfect. This is going to open up such a big transformation in schools, making sure they get their data quality under control, data governance between those various actors and the different systems. And with the cloud, there's a lot of systems that aren't under IT's purview anymore. So how do we bring those folks together? Probably a need for data scientists and a governance structure that can help do this in a systemic way instead of random acts of data and then try to pull all of that together in some decision-making process is going to be a challenge. I do want, because we got a short period of time, to move into some things that Lisa has been very passionate about, and that's untethered broadband and connectivity. Now, in this tech enabler, it's about making sure people are connected without being tethered down, and this really addresses some equity challenges that our kids are facing. And 51% of kids in public schools are on free and reduced lunch programs. And I know from being at Santa Fe how much the challenge for us to be able to get those kids connected, not only because they need internet and a device, but just all of the other support structures that are there. So Lisa, tell us why you're passionate about this and why it matters to you and your folks in your district.
Okay. First of all, Lisa Gistinelli. I'm Director of Instructional Technology at a K-12 school, but I'm also a professor at FAU. I was able to get a grant and be selected with another professor friend of mine as one of 11 entities. So FAU would be the entity as an FCC outreach partner. I've been working on technology outreach since 2011. I started a philanthropy where I bring technology to Madagascar, to remote areas where children have never even seen or touched a computer. So this isn't something new for me in my wheelhouse, all of this idea of the untethered broadband connectivity. Now, it's almost hard at this point to talk about in a concrete manner about what the future is, because now that we've had a change, and I'm not going to get political at all, but now that we've had a change in government, things that were in place clearly may stay or may be changed. But one thing that we know is as of June 2024, the Affordable Connectivity Program, which allowed low-income families, SNAP, WIC, Medicaid, SSI, to get connected at a very low cost. I've been attending many webinars and conferences and things about what's going to be happening here. And I know CoSN, I guess Keith could speak to this at some point, but the Universal Service Fund, where we collect money from telecommunications to help with E-rate programs, rural health care, and also low-priced connectivity. I've heard that some potential funding sources might be a broadband or an internet service fee, perhaps an annual congressional appropriation rather than this one that has a fixed number and then lasts for a really long time. So congressmen and senators might not want to vote on that one. And they've also thrown out the idea of a tax on online gambling. But that's just the background of what could possibly happen. The positive is that we have so many local community I'm here in South Florida. I see it in our county. I see it in the state, different homework gap programs, different organizations that are supplying devices to families who need them. When we were discussing this to get ready for today, Tom mentioned, as he did just a minute ago, about how children, need to go home, they need to be connected. But it's not only about the children being able to do their homework, it's also about the families being able to be connected so that they know what's going on at school. I mean, today's schools, that's how they do their communication, is through, everything is online. So if a family is not able to be connected to the school, then they can't support their child in their learning. And I've seen all this firsthand. As an outreach partner, we go to different areas, and what we were doing was going through to different areas and getting families connected, families who couldn't afford this.
Yeah, that's great. I think we've only got a couple more minutes left and we haven't even hit on AI. So Lauren, I know you've got some things going on in CPS around the broadband, but I'm going to ask if you want to throw that into the chat in a minute. I'd like to move you right into AI. That's your role. That's your whole life, is how do I implement this? And also, if you could send a link in the chat about your guidebook and the website where people get some more information, that would be great. But what is Chicago doing, and what do you see as a priority now into the future?
So the priority for us is definitely building an infrastructure, like the foundation to build upon. And so that goes both for AI governance in the district, but also literacy. And so about a year ago, we created our AI steering committee. So we have a set of district leaders who meet every other week to talk about AI in the district. It consists of our CIO, Deputy CIO, Deputy Chief of Teaching and Learning, also representatives from procurement and talent and other departments as well, to make sure that it's really a cross-functional team that's guiding this work. Since that time, we've actually then we determined that we need more support in the operational layer so that the AI steering committee can move into more of like a decision-making layer. And so we have since created subcommittees. So in the process right now, we had our chiefs and deputy chiefs throughout the entire organization. So that includes both on the educational and operational side of the house, nominate people from their various offices and departments to sit on the subcommittee. So those subcommittees will also be cross-functional, and their role is to be more of the operational layer for AI development in the district and overseeing specific domains. So basically breaking the organization up into 3 buckets, and then each bucket having that subcommittee overseeing that domain, and those subcommittees being chaired by a member of the steering committee. So really making sure that this is structured in a way that the whole team is aware of what everything else is going on, and everything feeds back up to the steering committee so that they can make those decisions. In terms of guidance for the district as well, really important to provide guidance. We went the approach of actually writing a guidebook. So I'll drop the link to our guidebook in the chat and the website, but instead of a policy, because a policy comes with so many restrictions and limitations and time constraints with regards to getting things approved by our board and so on and so forth. And so taking into consideration the rapidly evolving nature of this field, we wanted to also be able to evolve the guidebook. And so we have set that every quarter we're going to be updating the guidebook, both for the advancements in the field or changes in the field, and also for feedback from our stakeholders. So really providing an opportunity for all of our stakeholders throughout the district to review the guidebook, provide us insights and guidance as to what they feel should be edits that should be made to the guidebook. And so we already made our first edit last month, and we're going to be doing that every quarter moving forward. Standing up spaces for stakeholders to collaborate and share ideas, concerns, questions, and feelings about this technology as well is really important. So we created a professional learning community, again, cross-functional group. So there's teachers in there with principals in there with data specialists, with people from talent. And so we can really have these diverse conversations around not just the use of AI and generative AI in the respective roles, but really like people's feelings towards it, because this is a technology that people have opinions about it and feelings about what this is going to do to impact not just their professional lives, but also our personal lives as well. And so creating those spaces is really important. And so establishing that entire infrastructure where we have the groups of governance and those opportunities for professional learning, including badges that we've actually established. So we have a foundationals badge that's already out there, and we're creating 2 additional badges. So we're going to have a 3-tiered badge pathway specifically around AI, but we're going to be incorporating like digital citizenship and digital literacy. So really taking this opportunity where people are interested in learning about AI and generative AI to kind of take a step back and say, well, we probably should have been talking a lot more about media literacy, digital citizenship a little bit ago. So we're going to bring that back and start talking about that again, because a lot of that is brought forward again with the talking about the use of AI. And then also coping with change. That's a big topic that we're having as one of the workshops in the AI. So not even talking about AI specifically with regards to the change, but just how do you cope with change? How do you understand your circles of influence because of the impact that this technology is going to have on all of our lives?
Well, a well thought out plan. And I know we're towards the end of the time, if not very close to being at the end, but Lisa is just so passionate about this area. And we just heard from this big district with 300 and something thousand students. And that's a little different when it's in a little smaller environment. So Lisa, can you close us out with just some things that you think are critical or key that we want to add to this conversation from your perspective?
Yes. So critical or key to it is to think about that there are different levels of AI that we're seeing. Okay, we've got the chatbot level where somebody puts in a question and it spits out an answer. We've got the reasoner level, and that would be found, for example, in school AI, where students are assigned a sidekick. It's kind of like a tutor. Students writing a setting. They want to write a setting for the book, The Giver. So it won't just do the setting. It'll say, okay, well, what is a setting? What do you need to think about? Tell us about, talk about the characters in the book. But this is the most important one that we are going to be seeing, not only in education, but in the workplace too. And this is what we really have to prepare our students for. And that are what we call the digital agents. No longer are we just collaborating, with other human beings. Sitting next to us in that collaboration chair, at that seat, at that table, is going to be an AI digital agent. It's going to be part of the conversation and lead how we're going, the direction that we're going in, and collaborating with us. Then we've got the innovators. That's going to help the students who have to have a science fair project and they want to know how to design something. That's going to be the innovator. And then finally, the organizational AI, and that's our front office, and they're going to help them organize, the list that they just had of who came in late and who's absent today and who left because they were sick and who needed their lunch delivered to them. And it's going to help out with all of that. So there's just so many aspects of this. Of course, we could have gone on and on for hours and hours, but those are just some basic things that for us to think about. But for me, what stands out the most is that digital agent. And when we're thinking about introducing AI in the schools, we have to think about not be afraid of it and understand that we need to teach students how to work alongside the AI.
Well, hopefully it won't be layered on top of the core curriculum, but embedded into this is what a good teacher does and responds. So sorry for going over a little bit, Laura, and bringing it back to you.
Thank you so much to all our Tech Enabler panelists. Oh my gosh, it's hard to cut anyone off because there's so many good examples, so many good the outreach work that Lisa's doing. It's so important for us to be knowledgeable about this and great ideas from Lauren on what his district is doing. So I'm excited to see that guidebook. Now, for our last reflection on our top topics, our tech enablers, which I'll put the Mentimeter in the chat one more time. But what we want to know is which tech enabler is most important to you to leverage in order to further your quest. We're still on our journey. Our journey is only starting. So this is to overcome hurdles and to take advantage of accelerators and help us fulfill our why. So we'll work on our poll really quickly. We'll check out where everyone's at, where their mindset is, but most importantly, for you to reflect, not to be influenced by others' answers. And we'll breeze through this. We'll just take a few seconds to, and yes, Gen AI, not surprised, very alignment with our report, because what we want to do next is allow you all some time to chat with each other in breakout rooms. So we'll give another second before we close the poll, and then I'll kick it over to Lara to walk through this next process, next part of our discussion time together.
Awesome. Just for time, I'm going to jump in while you're still filling out the poll. I know as soon as we say the word breakout room, I've certainly been in meetings where I couldn't participate or didn't want to talk to other humans that day. If you are in a space where you don't want to go into a breakout room or you can't, it doesn't mean you have to leave. So we've got two great options for you. We're going to go into breakout rooms because, as we talked about earlier, being in community, this feeling not alone, talking with other people who understand the real challenges you're facing and the real opportunities is highly valuable. And we do this in the Driving K-12 Advisory Board. So we recommend that you go into a breakout room in just a couple of minutes. Our colleague Jill is getting that set up. But you do have another option. If you choose, you're welcome to stay in the main room and just listen in on a breakout discussion that's going to happen in this space. So we're lucky to have Emily, Andy, and Katie from the EdTech Innovation Committee who will be hanging out in the main room and having their own discussion group. So if you choose, you're welcome to stay for that. Okay, real quick, let's breeze through some instructions. So you'll have about 20 minutes, maybe more like 15 at this point, in your breakout groups. And we're going to ask you to give us just a second when you're beamed into your room. Because we have the option of staying in the main room, we'll need to shuffle a few people around so that the groups are even. Then get to know each other, spend a couple minutes connecting, and identify a volunteer to join the share out panel. So when everyone comes back together, we're going to ask for one representative from the group to come on the virtual stage and have a panel discussion with Stephanie around the insights from your group. So there will be a lot of you on stage. We'll have probably a full 8 or 9 people up at once. So don't feel like you need to give a dissertation. Just a quick share out as part of a conversation. And then discuss the topics that are relevant to your work and if any are particularly powerful in combination. We've got a notes document for you. This is optional, but it's got a space to take notes for your specific group. It's got instructions and then definitions if you need a refresher on any of these topics. And finally, the tips for conversation that we use in our advisory board discussions. We ask that you speak from your experience and welcome others to speak from theirs. Make space for all voices, step up when you have something to share, step back to listen, listen to understand, and it's okay to disagree, but we ask that you do so with curiosity. So we're going to go into those breakout rooms. You will see the invitation from Jill pop up. There we go. So hop on over to your breakout rooms. If you choose to stay in the main room, that's cool too. If you have difficulty getting into your room, throw it in the chat. And we'll see you back here in 15 to 20 minutes. While that transition is happening, I'm just going to stop the screen share. And for our breakout group in the main room, we're going to ask Emily, Andy, and Katie to come onto the stage. And Jill, I will go ahead and spotlight them since you are busy with other work. So we've got Katie, got Emily, add to spotlight, and then I've just got to find Andy. There we go. Okay, Emily, I'm done talking. All over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We were going to just give a quick introduction so you guys kind of know where we're coming from. Katie, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'm Katie Harmon. I am the Director of Educational Technology for West Hill. It is a smallish district right outside of Syracuse, New York. We have about 1,700 kids.
Awesome. Thanks. Andy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Fekete. I am the Director for Innovation and Technology in District 93 in Illinois. We're about 40 minutes outside Chicago. We have about 4,000 students, K-8, pre-K-8.
Awesome. And I'm Emily Marshall. My kind of expertise comes from 11 years in education, from a teacher through all kinds of technology roles. I recently finished at the Vail School District in Tucson, Arizona. We have about 14,000, 15,000 students, and just recently transitioned over into higher ed in kind of a similar role. So we're excited to talk today. Andy, Katie, did you guys have anything that stood out kind of from the first part of the summit?
I mean, I just want to say to start
Andy.
how rich the conversations were that we heard from the panelists. I mean, it was just so many fascinating and great ideas. I was taking you can't see my notes, but I was taking so many notes of great ideas and great conversation starters to have with others. So that was just a wonderful opening.
Okay. Katie, do you have something you're going to say?
Oh, it's just something small, and I kind of put it in the chat a while back, but it was really interesting when they did the polls, and my choices were also most of everyone else's choices, and it just made me have the feels, I guess, because it was nice to feel like I wasn't alone. And I love that. And it also validated me too, I'm kind of moving in the same direction as other really awesome, innovative people.
I think that's really interesting, and I think to build upon that, knowing behind the scenes and kind of the direction that this was going, that we were going to, vote for, like what was most important to us. It was also interesting to listen to the panelists. And while I didn't actually end up changing my vote for the poll, I was kind of swayed on my vote once I heard the importance of some of these things from the other panelists that may be in different situations or working with different communities. That it was like, well, yeah, I mean, this one is really driving me, but I can also really see why this is just so important over here. But to your point, Katie, it did help validate like that we are all on this journey together, and that we're all kind of working through these same things, and that there are no easy answers to any of these large questions that we're working through.
Yeah, I agree. Just a little addition. One thing that I appreciated is there's so many challenges in public education that are not within our control. I really appreciated the positive outlook and kind of the things people were doing that are within our control and are things that we can do today and build on, as time goes on, and really make a positive impact on kids and teachers.
Absolutely.
Did you guys have anything from hurdles that stood out that you want to kind of call out?
So I noticed in the chat that there was a lot of great dialogue that was happening around attracting and retaining educators and IT professionals. And I pulled out one quote. Someone had put, tech support staff need to meet with their peers in other districts often to build communities of practice, especially for low-staffed schools. And I just thought that was a great thing to point out. So often we talk about, connecting our educators with one another, whether it's in district or neighboring districts, connecting our principals and admins with one another. But I think as we look to be district and leaders in education, we also need to look at those IT professionals and how are we connecting those people with one another so that they can continue to build and grow, be connected to a community of practice. I mean, we're very fortunate in Illinois that we have a really strong CoSN chapter that just helps build and grow and facilitate that community of practice. But how can we be mindful of that in other places that might not have those strong chapters to help those individuals grow in their roles?
It's interesting, Andy. I was thinking about the same thing. In Central New York, we belong to BOCES, like a cooperative, and we have our monthly or quarterly DOT meetings where we can collaborate together. We have data privacy and security meetings where we can collaborate together. But my network guys don't ever have that opportunity. We started a listserv for them specifically, but it's pretty quiet. And it's really difficult, I think, to encourage people who are used to working behind the scenes constantly on their own to reach out, to collaborate, to ask questions of their colleagues. They're very hesitant to do that. I find that to be very challenging.
Yeah, that's very well said.
Yeah, I agree. If you know me at all, I've said a million times, I'm very introverted, but this is one thing we really kind of fell into in Arizona. We created a community where we have monthly CIO, CTO chats, but it also includes network guys and anyone that's interested in that area, and just a rich network of people to connect with and share these kind of experiences. And that's been single-handedly the biggest impact on my career and the things that I've been able to do. So I totally agree.
And I want to call out what Andy King said in the chat, where he said, we have a listserv of all of Missouri tech directors, and it's amazing how much they help each other and share, and it's an old technology, but it's highly effective. And we see the same thing in Illinois. We have this amazing group it's our CoSN chapter, and they have a listserv, and it's just very active. I mean, many emails, any question that you could ever have, you could throw it in there. But I really think it does require creating a culture for sharing, right? Yeah. Creating a culture for being open and saying, raising your hand and saying like, hey, I don't know how to diagnose this issue, right? Hey, I'm struggling in this area. Hey, my students or my teachers are asking for this, and I'm not sure how to configure the network to make it work in that way. And And I think it's fortunate that many of us have that. But I think we also need to realize that many people do not, and they're left struggling, feeling like they're on lone islands with these hurdles that they need to overcome to pull in the language, right? That these hurdles that they need to overcome, but not that support structure around them to reach those goals.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said about creating a culture for that, being a leader in the way that you can step out and be vulnerable and say that you need help. And I've even found, searching other school districts, looking up the people who do my job and send an email. And a lot of times people will respond. And that's just been so incredibly helpful for me in my career.
Yeah,
Um,
same. And it's also nice to like I have the DOT group and there's like 50 districts that belong to that, but there's a couple of like side group chats that we have too in Google Chat. And it's nice when you can participate as a member and not just a consumer in those kinds of groups. So you're sharing what you know and they share what they know with me. And like you said, Emily, I wouldn't be where I am in my career and doing what I'm doing without those people and their support.
yeah, that's so important.
Yep, very well said. So if we look at accelerators, Emily and Katie, was there anything that jumped out to you during the accelerator conversation?
One thing that I kind of wrote down, Ryan, Sarah, and Chris were talking about learner agency and how that when you make that shift, the students are doing the work as opposed to teachers. And kind of the connection I made is not only is that good for students, but it's also good for the teachers. And it really frees them up to have more capacity for like growing and learning and easing some of the burnout that we're seeing with teachers. I thought that was really cool in the connection to another accelerator, which was building the human capacity of leaders. Which is always fascinating to me. It's something I feel really passionate about, but that's also one of those things that we see year over year within this report. So I don't know. That just stood out to me.
Yeah, totally agree. And I would even connect it to the third one about the changing attitudes towards learning, right? Like empowering students. I really felt like that conversation was just super powerful because it did a great job of really combining all three of those accelerators into one great thought to kind of think through and think, again, as district leaders, as leaders in education in our regions, right? Like how can we help our teachers and our schools, our superintendents, our principals, our administrators really work towards these goals? And what does this provide? What are these plus ones that it provides our communities?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to flip what you said, Emily, the other way, starting with the changing attitudes towards demonstrating learning. In my very humble opinion, as a former classroom teacher, that's what changed my classroom culture. And that's what allowed me to give my learners agency, is because I had to change where I was coming from to meet them where they're coming from, I guess, in a way. And once I started to think about that differently, they don't have to do a paper and pencil test to show me what they know. Now I can give you choice. Now you can be the leader in the classroom and the leader of that content or whatever it may be. It completely changed classroom culture.
Yeah, that's fascinating. One thing that makes me think of is as technology leaders, many of us have classroom experience, curriculum experience, many of us don't, but as a group, as a whole, how do we start leading some of that change, knowing that there's a lot of systemic issues impacting teaching? What are some things we can do as leaders to help, build the human capacity of leaders and attracting and retaining teachers, which is vital to, all these other switches that we're talking about?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. After we met in the last meeting, I was driving home and I sent Laura a message. I was like, what if we create this kind of resource? I was like speaking into my phone as I'm driving home because my brain was like just going, and I was thinking about like how can we help each other support your district? So how can we give you the tools? Because not everybody came from a classroom background. Some people come from the tech background and they may not understand or know yet quite how all of that works in the classroom and how you can engage kids and how can we support each other to move the classroom forward, I guess. and demonstrate our leadership in a way in the region or in the nation.
For sure. And what are those first steps that teachers can take to reach those more lofty goals, right? Like, hey, it would be great to like one day have, students like completely independent, right? And like, well, maybe that's like too lofty for me to conceptualize, but like, here's a first step to start developing that learner agency. And what does that look like? And I think that, and then again, highlighting what are some of the benefits of that. Where they spoke to more capacity for growing, learning, and easing burnout, right? Were three things that really stuck with me from that conversation.
Yeah, even zooming out a little bit more, one of the things I always go back to, I feel like sometimes my empathetic nature got in the way of me being able to make progress sometimes, because I like so deeply feel the stress that teachers are under. So I'm thinking, zooming out a little bit more, of everything on the report, I feel like two of the most important for education in general is that building the human capacity leaders and attracting and retaining teachers, because I think leadership is so stinking important, right? Like you think about all the things we can't control in education, but the single biggest thing we can control within what we have right now is the quality of our leaders. I don't know if you guys kind of feel the same or if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I really feel like it goes back to a culture piece, right? Like how much of this is the culture of, how are we going to develop our people, right? And in what ways are we going to develop and empower, our leaders and our educators to really do what's best for students? We started with that, that opening, what's your why? And it's infusing that what's your why back into them to say, remember, this is why we're doing this. The book that sits behind me, the book that I see every day when I come into my office is Simon Sinek's Start With Why book, because it's just has had such a powerful impact on me and the lives of so many other people. And I think that that's just a great reminder as we look to cultivate more leaders and more educators that are just doing amazing things for students.
Andy, Emily, Katie, I cannot believe that the time is up already, but I thank you all so much. I felt like I was getting a preview of the Super Bowl where you were commentating about the conversation that we've had. And I'm so grateful for it because it really, there's something really powerful about hearing how others digest information. So for me, it was really helpful to hear what was most important to you, and also just how you created some synergies. And Andy, your conversation about culture work is just, I think, so important and so needed now more than ever, likely. So I am so grateful to you all for having this rich discussion today. And are we all back? Are the rooms closed?
Yeah, everybody's back.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Oh, I hope that your discussions in the breakout rooms were as wonderful as the one that we had here in the main room. And again, I want to thank Emily, Katie, and Andy for facilitating that conversation. So here's what we're going to do next. We've asked you to identify panelists who will join Emily and I in a kind of group discussion and share out. We're going to keep it kind of short because we're running low on time. But if you could please raise your hand so that Jill could spotlight you and we'll get our conversation started. And if you could also do me a favor, and this is for those who've been selected to be part of our share out panel, if you could also, because we want to save a little time, but we want everyone to know who you are and where you're from, if you could just put in the chat that information exactly so that others will get to know you a little bit as we dive right in. And Emily, I'm going to go to you first because one of the suggested questions that we put in the notes document was about combinations of the top topics. And I know that that is something that you touched on a little bit in the main room. Maybe you could kick off our discussion.
Yeah, so kind of the last one we ended on is talking about the combination of building the human capacity of leader and retaining and attracting educators. And really, when we're talking about all of these things, regardless of what it is, it really comes down to having a qualified, healthy staff that can support these things. So I think it's really important to invest in our leaders so that we can attract and retain these people that come to our schools and feel excited to be there and willing to learn and grow with us.
Absolutely. And did anyone else have a similar? And that's really what we want to do in these this time together is kind of hear a little bit from everyone, but also did you have similar conversations, different conversations? So I'll quiet myself and let others speak.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what we talked about in our group too, about taking you have some teachers in the building or in districts that are accelerators themselves and finding ways to help them find their niche to get to where they need to, if it remains in the classroom or if it, moving into an administrative level and stuff like that. And kind of putting the gum in the hole in the dam to keep those on board that are really driving innovation in the classroom and everything without burning them out. So we talked about both of those kind of things too, like how can we, you know, praise them for what they're doing, support them, but also, be there to create bigger, better opportunities as well at the same time.
We also talked about in our group, and it came about thinking about the transition from COVID, and then people wanted to revert back, but then, now we have AI coming. So just this constant need to innovate, but we also talked about the word transform as well. And then we also mentioned, the bridge addressing change, right? So like really enabling them to shift mindsets and perspective and empowering those innovators that we have, while at the same time keeping, the guardrails in place.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I think, in terms of a couple of other things that came up in our group, one of the key elements was making a difference in student success by helping breaking out from silos. In particular, saying, working with educators, working with students to decide, well, when do you use this and how do you use this to help achieve a particular learner's goal? So for instance, one of the examples we discussed is the fact that an AI can explain a topic as many times as necessary, doesn't get tired, in as many different ways as necessary, and how that can take a student from having difficulties with a topic in the particular example we discussed to being, in the top group in their class. Because it's not that the AI is providing an answer, rather it's providing a framework, a tool for student learning, and that's where we want to go. Explore more, work more with teachers, with learners, provide the professional development for teachers so that they can explore this aspect of AI.
And group 6 talked about student agency as the heart of this, the importance of this work. And then the rest of the group talked about equity, evolution, and teaching and learning, and broadband connectivity. And in a way, all three of those, broadband connectivity, equity, and the evolution of teaching and learning, in a way revolved around the importance of equity and of incorporating everybody, the learners, the parents, the teachers, and providing opportunity for connectivity and growth and communication for all the groups. And as part of the equity, the discussion was specifically about addressing digital divide, design, and access. And so we briefly talked also about universal design for learning, as how to approach and reach every single learner in the ways that they need to be reached.
I'll piggyback off of that for our group. We talked about AI, which I think is kind of the big topic for everybody, but then we went into cybersecurity too, and how AI leads into cybersecurity practices. And then going into digital equity, we want to keep our students' data safe and secure. But when we start blocking things on our school devices, are we then creating a barrier for students who don't have a device at home? So balancing the digital divide with cybersecurity with those AI tools, I think is just a really tough topic we have right now, but it's disruptive innovation. And these are the times where we're gonna we're going to look at these different categories and figure out what works and what doesn't work. So although it's a really tough time, I think it's a really exciting time as well.
Brilliant. And I was curious, did anyone talk about changing attitudes toward demonstrating learning in their group? I see some nodding.
Yeah. Actually, group 2, we covered that a good bit. That was actually one of the after we introduced ourselves, probably one of the starting questions. And we kind of deviated from it, but not too much. So the others are welcome to chime in some. But what we kind of rolled into was that, how does that connect with the AI pieces? The demonstration of learning. If you use this tool, what was traditionally thought of, hey, but at the same time, how do you learn to the evolution of work and other things where we see these AI agents, as Ruben pointed out, where that you work alongside that tool, and the teachers are going to work alongside these tools. So how do you, if you have a product and you're using that to make it better, or generate ideas and storyboard things differently, or generate through ideas, but you're then working with the tool, not the tool doing everything for you, so you're not learning. But that also tied into media literacy and the evolution of that, and we talked about what do you remember? Would you, if 20 years out, like a number of us aren't just fresh out of high school or college necessarily on this call, but what stood out? What is the thing that you remember 20 years after you graduated or from your high school experience? And it's usually those high quality, it seemed to, at least for me and some of the other, those high quality kind of project-based learning experiences, or you had some unique activity that you did in a particular class that really learned and stuck with you. Not the there's other exceptions to that, obviously, but those are some of the things that we focused on with that. And then we also tied into privacy and the evolution of these tools, because we're still in the infancy here. With AI has been around a long time, but this generative use of generative tools and the way they're evolving so rapidly, we're only really in year 2 with the wide markets, and we've seen so much change. So what's it going to look 2 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years from now? We really kind of have to be embracing and working with this change. So it's not just a whole brand new thing all at once at some point, but most of the tools we have already are all of a sudden adding these components, and they're changing right under our feet, so to speak, or under our keyboards. But so that also brought up privacy challenges and those barriers to tool adoption, and where we have a tool now, all of a sudden there's something there we haven't reviewed the privacy, and it might not be something we can keep using, or depending upon how they implemented their tool. Not all those we've seen a number of cases where it's not always the best implementation, and the company will have to turn something back off because they tried it and it kind of went a little array or out of its way. But anyway, those are the things we touched upon in group 2.
Oh, well, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface, but our time together is so limited today. So I just want to say thank you so much. I just am such a big fan of this group, and I'm always so inspired to hear all that you have to say. So thank you so much for joining our short share out panel. I am going to point you one last time to Mentimeter, because we have one final question that we would like to ask you today, because we've covered so many topics. And as Laura mentioned at the beginning of the summit, this work is about creating the future of learning. So my question for you is, what is one concrete step you're going to take to drive innovation in the next 6 months, having attended this summit and hopefully been inspired or learned something, or shared something, or had a really heartfelt conversation, is my hope, and built your community a little bit? What are some of the things that you're planning to do? And there is no small act that you can make. Even the smallest thing can make a big difference. Oh, I didn't. Oh, I'm like, did I not share the link? Thank you, Laura. And I love all the connection that's happening in the chat. Thank you so much. And thank you. I see some answers rolling in. And as you are filling that out, Laura, do we want to share some of these and then really quickly share the Choose Your Own Adventure map from today?
Yeah, we'll kind of speed through the end of this. It's looking at the topics that are arising here as you share out in Mentimeter, as well as themes from the conversation. I think community is a big one. The idea that we're not alone in this work, whether it's finding community at CoSN in the Driving K-12 advisory project, within your district. Emily mentioned reaching out to people you might not know who have your same job in other districts if you have a question. This sort of bravery that comes from seeking out community and learning alongside people. A lot of this work we're figuring out as we go along. And so, community is one big thing that stood out to me. As we wrap things up, continue, please, to feel free to share here. I want to real quick give you some materials to take with you. So we, of course, have the publication link. I'm just going to drop your quest, or Steph will drop your quest materials. Yeah, thank you, Steph, in the chat.
Sure.
In here, you'll find a link to download the publication. You'll also find today's quest map. So I've already exported this. It's in the folder for you to take with you as your notes from today. And there's also a blank version of this in here with just the top topics, space for you to fill out your why. So if the process that we went through today is something you're interested in, download the blank copy, print it out, fill it out for yourself, work with it with your team. That's one thing that I love about the process we go through with the advisory board is it's a framework for conversation. It's a place to start. To go back to our beginning, it's not about telling you the answer. It's about figuring out and creating the futures together. If you want to talk more about the process for any of this, please reach out to Steph and I. We're part of this community that you're a part of. And so just as we end here, I'm going to turn it over to Steph with one more community-based note.
Yes. So if you had fun today, like we did, and really gained something from these conversations, I want to invite you to apply to be part of the Driving K-12 Innovation Advisory Board for next year. I put the link in the chat. While the deadline feels far away, July 15th, it is not. And if you were inspired today, ride that wave. This is one thing that you can do in regards to our poll question, one concrete step you can take to drive innovation. So you can check that off your list if you'd like to apply. It's a very simple form. I thank you so much for being here. We're right on time. And just happy innovating. I know that we are just beginning this, well, for many of us, not beginning, but today is a new start. And so we're on this journey together. And we wish you all your best on your quest this calendar year, this academic year. But yes, we invite you to join us and continue to be part of these important discussions. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
You all did a great job.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Thank you to all our contributors. Thanks for all for attending. Thank you, CoSN. Thank you to our sponsors. We're so grateful for you all.
This was truly fantastic. Yeah, great job.
Thank you,
thanks
Andy.
so much, Andy.
You were very much a part of it. Thank you for your contributions today.
Thanks. We'll see you guys around.
Thank you.
All right, I've got a meeting to start, so I will see you guys later.
Thanks so much, Jill. Bye.
Bye.